Ford told me, we don't think we're going to be able to staff the plant from the local area. We're definitely going to have to bring in workers from out of the state. And so it's just like, again, gentrification, or it's going to really change the makeup of their culture and what they have known for generations there.
We have on the line with us now Bianca Cunningham from Tennessee for All, a nonprofit coalition that advocates for poor and working Tennesseans. Bianca, welcome to the program. Appreciate you taking the time. Absolutely. Glad to have you. So start off talking to us about your work coming to Tennessee for All and what the organization does.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I work for an organization called Bargaining for the Common Good. And what they do is basically fund labor, community, faith coalitions around the country. And so when they were looking to make an investment in the South, Tennessee kind of reached out to us and let them know that they were ready to use that type of framework for their own fights in the state. And so 2021, we set up it was labor unions, it was community organizations that work on everything from policing to environment, et cetera, as well as some faith organizations reached out and said that they wanted to create a coalition that can really transform the political landscape of their state. And what they're looking at is about 26,000 jobs being added to Tennessee because of the electrical vehicle investment that's happening right now around the state. And so they're thinking about how can they soften the ground for labor in a way that we know that unions haven't done that great in the past as far as the community engagement.
Right. And you've been doing, labor and labor adjacent work for a while now. Actually, we met, I don't know if Adam told you this, but we met when you were doing an organizer training in Birmingham. Back in like 2018 or 2019, so it's been a while.
A lot's changed since then.
A lot has changed. So, what brought you to this kind of work?
Yeah, so actually that training that you were talking about, that was whenever I was at Labor Notes. And so, I have been trained by some of the best in rank and file education. But I think before that, about 10 years ago, I was a retail worker in Brooklyn, New York, and I started my own union with my coworkers. And I realized a couple of things through that process. Number one, a lot of people that we interfaced with in the union had never actually put it out on the line for their own job before, meaning they probably got hired into a union position. So I think that, having that experience of organizing, with CWA, which was a great experience, but, having to go through a year and a half of bargaining, we struck for 49 days for our very first contract, right?
Wow.
I think a lot of stories in there illuminated reasons why, it's important that there's representation from community in unions because unions can be pretty siloed. And I just remember, shout out to Bob Master, who was the political director back then. I remember him grumbling in the corner saying that what they don't understand is that we're past the time where you could just win a strike. You can't win a strike without community support. And that always really stayed with me because it's something that I didn't really see in my community talked about that often. We knew a lot of people had blue collar jobs. We knew what a good city job or a good union job was, but we didn't have a lot of people advocating for good labor jobs. So when I got the opportunity to go to Bargaining for the Common Good, it seemed so up my alley with talking about racism in the labor movement, talking about how we can center anti-racist themes in the labor movement and how we can really bring in community in a way that they don't feel like they're being talked down to because the union is more powerful, it has more money, but how can we create a real equal partnership where we're moving the work together?
No, I think I think that's great. And so
also I just want to say the potential when we have community faith labor coalitions is so huge. There's so much untapped potential there, particularly here in the South, because you're right. These groups often haven't been talking with each other, haven't been building networks of solidarity amongst each other, and the more we show up for each other and the more we support our efforts, it's. I think the sky is the future, it really is so much potential in terms of diversifying our movement, strengthening our movement, hitting it from different directions, right, and bringing in different people's talents and skills and relationships that they have. It's just, it's very important work what you're doing, and we're, definitely trying to do some of that work here in Alabama as well. And it's exciting to see that happening in Tennessee and right here in the South.
How did that work get started in Tennessee? What was the impetus in Tennessee in the labor movement to say that yeah, we want to try to do more to involve the community?
Well, for lack of, better circumstances, they're already really operating, and y'all probably know this from Alabama. They're already operating as an ecosystem because they're severely underfunded. Unions don't have a ton of power or capacity. So like, I think my introduction to the South was like, coming from New York where unions have like full staff, you have comms, you have like a whole team behind you. And then coming to the South and being like, I only have one or maybe nobody off of, even on work release, right? So they've already been operating as an ecosystem. I think what they wanted to do from using the bargaining for the common good framework was two things. Number one, figure out a way to talk about and amplify the corporate power that's building, that we know that Republicans in our state, are championing all the time and taking care of their friends. So how can we draw attention to the corporations? We know 60% of corporations aren't paying taxes in the state of Tennessee, for instance, right? So it's like, how can we start to go after different targets than just the government, especially when there's a Republican trifecta and it feels really hard, right? And I think the second thing was like, how can we bring direct action? We know that Tennessee has a long history and legacy of, the home of the civil rights movement and so many other important struggles. It's like, how can we start to bring that spirit of direct action and confrontation back as we're, looking at the wealthiest individuals in the state and who's taking advantage of us? And so I feel like the labor councils and, it was like, it's United Campus Workers, the labor councils, SEIUs, all came together and put their egos aside, along with, like I said, Memphis for All. They do community policing and safety, Stand Up Nashville, which a lot of people know about, and in the Gamaliel organizations. The other thing I would say that they were really interested in was like, we didn't, and this is something I learned, they didn't have any statewide infrastructure in any organization in the state, meaning no organization had a statewide reach or a statewide program or anything like that. Everybody was operating mostly in, the rural, the urban centers, or, like the city centers, which is like Nashville, Memphis, and even Chattanooga and Knoxville a little bit. And so we were saying, well, if you look at the map, 91 of 96 of the counties in this state are rural. So if we're only organizing in Nashville, we got a problem because we're never going to be able to reach the people that we need. And so that was another impetus for us coming down there, doing rural organizing around the electrical vehicle battery plants. We've done direct action. When I first got there, they told me that they hadn't even, I was like I'm coming from New York where we had like a robust movement. I was, member of the DSA. We're getting people elected, we're moving things and and it's because of thousands and thousands of volunteers. And going down there, them telling me in 2021, like, we haven't even had unpaid canvassers since 2005. And I was like, well, so they're like, nobody's going to get in the street. Like, we're too polite. Like, we're not doing that. And, fast forward to like a lot of working, a lot of honest conversations, a lot of agitation. And we were able to put 300 people in the Amazon office in Nashville last year. So I just feel like it was a desire to want to break from what they had been doing and try something, different.
The community stuff has really been beneficial, as I understand it, for workers, particularly in Nashville. And I'm interested in some of the stuff that you're doing in rural communities as well. But we have Vonda in the YouTube chat, president of the Nashville Labor Council. She's a big fan of yours. She says that you're an organizing phenomenon. And we had Ann Barnett from the Nashville Labor Council come talk to our labor council in North Alabama about some of the work that they've been doing, and they talked about how Stand Up Nashville was able to get a community benefits agreement with a new stadium that was being built. Yeah, to build it, not explicitly with union labor, that's not written in there, but with union wages, with safety, union safety standards, with union training standards. And so, who are the only people left that are willing to do that, right? Of course, the non-union contractors could up their game and they could, meet all these standards and be, kind of taking the high road, but they don't want to do that. And we know that. And so the people that are left are the union contractors. And so how were you involved in that campaign?
Actually, they know I was not involved in that campaign. I came in the tail end of that. And I know that one thing we need to talk about when we talk about community benefits agreement is enforcement, right? How do you actually enforce the agreement afterwards? But that's another conversation. I would want to shout out too that they were able to get dedicated affordable housing for the area, which is, if anybody knows Nashville, it's so expensive. People can't afford to live there. It's a service, the service industry is huge, right? It's a tourist city. And so that was really special. One of the things I'm working on right now, though, is trying to replicate what they did around the Ford Blue Oval in Mason, Tennessee. It's about hour and a half outside of Memphis. And so this is generations of it's a black farming town. And they're basically getting ran over through eminent domain, no input from, Ford is talking about generational wealth and coming into the landowners and offering them $3,500 an acre. I mean, This is what we're dealing with. There's no infrastructure there. And so when you talk about adding 6,000 jobs to a very rural, underdeveloped area like that, we know that it's going to change, the makeup of what they've been calling home forever. They have a very great aquifer, very clean water, very fertile soil for farming. And so we're trying to say, if Ford is going to come in and make this $6 billion investment in Blue Oval City, then they ought to have enough money, especially from taxpayer money, by the way, because they got $3 million. Okay, 3 billion, excuse me, from the state, and I believe 9 billion total from the federal government.
Wow.
So we're saying, where's the investment into the community around here? And people want a Wakanda. We want all the electrical vehicle, cool things that we're thinking about. We want green space. We want green infrastructure. We want the people to, have a return on the investment of their tax dollars that Ford has been able to use to build this.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Can you say that again? You said it was $3 billion from the state of Tennessee for this one factory?
$2.9 billion. Yeah.
That's insane. We have done in Alabama, Adam, it's only been $1.5 billion over 30 years to half a dozen different auto manufacturers, right?
Yeah, that's remarkable.
That's wild. That is insane. And that's on top of $9 billion from the federal government, you said. That's
right. And a dollar lease for the land. Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
What we're saying is the federal government or Biden administration supposedly gave that money and said, you got to take care of the community because this is not that popular. But we know that Ford's version of community benefits agreement has been a $50,000 check to the Boys and Girls Club or, taking care of certain organizations. And what we're saying is we want long-term investment that really addresses the impact that people are already feeling from this facility.
Yeah, of course. And so how far along is the facility? And this is a really, this could potentially be a very kind of touchy subject for labor. We're talking about a new Ford plant. Almost certainly, the UAW has card check provisions with Ford, I believe. And so almost certainly this is going to be a union plant, 6,000 union jobs here soon. And so you could see a world where labor is lining up behind Ford and supporting the kind of running over of this small black town on the west end of Tennessee. And so how far along is the construction? Is it actually done being built? Because I remember years ago, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with America's Workforce, but it's this union radio program in Ohio. I remember years ago the iron workers going on America's Workforce in Ohio talking about we need iron workers to come down and work this plant to build this thing. So how far is it along? What have y'all been doing to try to make Ford do more than give $50,000 to the Boys and Girls Club? And what's the status of all of that? And where is labor right now? That's a lot at you, so I'm sure you're capable.
That is a lot. I might have to tag in Miss Vonda on this one now. So the plan is set to open in 2025, and it's true that like it's not completely built, although it is going up fast. They're still like waiting on some permits and some different things. They're building their own water treatment facility to treat their own water. I think environmental concerns come around the top line of the concerns right now because we know that those batteries are so toxic. We haven't really heard a real plan to how they're going to dispose of them. When I was part of this thing called the Blue Oval Roundtable, where Ford invites all of these local organizations to, give input, and they flew us all out to their headquarters in Detroit. And, one of the things I asked is, what's the plan for the battery disposal? And they told me that they hope that there is like a really strong secondary market where they'll never have to dispose of a battery. They can just keep selling you it over and over in different cars, which was concerning. So yeah, but we have some time. As far as labor, it is being built union right now. We are working closely like with LIUNA, for instance, and I know that LIUNA is working really hard to get people in the local community hired to help build it. So labor is there right now. As far as the UAW, I just want to address two things. Number one, yeah, it is true that they have neutrality, but we also know, because we saw this with Volkswagen, that the company doesn't have to do an anti-union campaign. The state will do it for them. Yeah, so there's no guarantees ever, right? But UAW has been really great. So something happened. So when we started doing Tennessee for All, originally we were working on education, fully funding education, and we were doing stuff around, they had a right to work bill that was trying to be codified in the state constitution that we were fighting against, us and the NAACP. Tennessee for All, because the state Fed wouldn't fight it, right? So we stepped up and said, we think it's that important. Of course, we got our asses kicked, but in that fight, people started to, take notice of us. And so the folks in Mason were some of those folks that took notice and invited us out. And we were able to bring, a bunch of people out to Mason, Tennessee, which is in the footprint of the Blue Oval facility. And what was happening with them was that as soon as Ford announced that they were coming, the state of Tennessee tried to revoke this Mason's charter, small Black rural town, to absorb it into the surrounding white county, because they wanted to, steamroll through this community and without any input. So they revoked their charter, or they tried to revoke the charter, saying that they owed all this money, causing corruption. We were able to work with them. I think even UAW may have made like one of their payments for them. And so we're really trying to go a long way to build with those folks. And, this is the idea is like, I worked on the Nissan campaign in Canton, Mississippi. I remember how that was, as far as like, it took forever. I wasn't on it the whole time, but it's just like, it was still too late, right? It took so long and it was still too late. And so part of our thinking was in 2021, when we started getting to know these folks, and like, they came in realizing what we were about. They were like, we need to organize ourselves. And they decided they wanted a community benefits agreement. And so what we've been doing is we've been holding town halls, doing surveys, phone banks, canvassing on doors to try to build a coalition in that community that can identify what the impact is. And their stuff is like, housing has skyrocketed ×3 since Ford announced. It's just like very predatory right now. I mentioned the $3,500 an acre. So people, the state coming in with eminent domain and really lowballing these Black farmers. And then, like I said, people are concerned about not only the environment and the health of the environment, but also these 6,000 jobs, right? Like, I asked the folks at Ford directly to their face, like, what's the pipeline to get these folks hired? I saw that they opened like a STEM school, K through 12. I think it's great. And I also think that by the time anybody goes through that school, we already know that how you hire in a facility is like really what the makeup of the facility is going to be, because of nepotism, because people know about the jobs from people that they know, et cetera. And so it's like, it's not good enough to say that we're going to wait 12 years for somebody to be able to start getting a job. And, and they've had this happen in that area before. They had a private prison and, and it's closed now. And one of the things I asked is like, oh, was that devastating to the economy? And they said no, because nobody here had those jobs. Those are all people that were coming from other parts of the state or even out of state, right? And so we're really concerned with the workforce pipeline. And I think this is something all labor can get behind, is like, if labor can come together and set up, like, what are the workforce standards that we want to, set with Ford, right? What kind of pipelines do we want to, create as far as training, so that we can ensure that people that are there and have been there can like benefit from these jobs, right? Because, and Ford told me, we don't think we're going to be able to, staff the plant, from the local area. We're definitely going to have to bring in workers from out of the state. And so it's just like, again, that's like gentrification, or it's going to really change the makeup of what, their legacy, their culture, and what they have known for generations there.
Right. Well, definitely want you to keep us up to date on that, and looking forward to seeing y'all be able to get a good community benefits agreement to hammer out some of this stuff with the pipeline, because it's really important that the community where this is happening is able to benefit from it, and it's just amazing. I've said this multiple times, but and if people, if you've been listening long enough, you know who I'm talking about, and you can go back and you can find the interview. But we had a city councilor, a candidate at the time, on the program, and he was talking about I want to do these quality of life improvements in my district and all this stuff. And so I asked him about, basically the gentrification question, right? You've seen that in Nashville, in other places across the country to a huge extent. And we've seen it a little bit here in Huntsville. People in 35801 have been priced out of their of places where they've lived for, generations.
Right.
And people from out of the city, out of the state are coming in and buying, California money coming in and buying Alabama houses, right? And so there's a lot of this that's actually not benefiting people in Huntsville. And so, how are you going to make sure that these quality of life things benefit the people that have always lived there? And he was like, oh, I've never thought about that. That's an interesting question, Jake.
Yeah, well, and I think what you were talking about, Bianca, in terms of the workforce development, I know that was something addressed in the New Flyer Community Benefits Agreement here in Anniston, Alabama, in terms of pre-apprenticeship programs, in terms of targeting underserved communities, minority communities, those who haven't always gotten a fair shake at getting these jobs. And I think that is, like you said, that's something all of labor can get behind. And really, I think labor has to be involved, at the high school level even. And we have to be in those conversations about how do we prepare folks and, what do we need and how can we get these young folks to become union workers, right, when they leave. So, yeah, there's so much we could talk about with this. Honestly, I'm just really, really proud of what y'all are doing. And proud to see this kind of coalition building here in the South, because I think it's transformative and it really can make a difference here. And that's the path forward. Because like you said, these ecosystems that we have are small, we're underfunded, we're outgunned, outmanned. The billionaire class, the elites who have long dominated these states and these state legislatures, all we have is people power to fight back, right? And so it's really impressive to see that kind of growth, to see a win like a CBA in Nashville, hopefully another CBA very soon out at Blue Oval. So that's just, I love it. Love to see it.
Yeah, I've got one more Tennessee specific question, and then I want to hear about your podcast. Tennessee, as I understand it, had the highest union growth in the country. Is that right, Adam? Or is it just the South?
I knew it was the South. I'm not sure if it was the whole country.
Well, a lot.
You tell us.
Yeah, you tell us.
That's news to me.
Okay,
okay,
so highest union growth in the South. To what extent was that Bianca? Was that like 20% Bianca or like
Bianca
50%?
and Vonda?
Yeah, like,
that was Miss Vonda.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, it's really, we have enjoyed getting to know the Nashville CLC and hear about the Memphis CLC and just see the real progress that's happening, to see forward momentum and energy, right? Because it has been pretty dead in the South for a long time when it comes to like labor politics. We have been encircled for so long and just been on the defensive. But the more we get out of these silos, like you said, and build relationships with folks, build that people power network, the more we can accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard. And I just want to say that to people. Like, it's
Right.
not easy. It's messy. There's agitation involved. Egos get involved sometimes. We have to be patient with people that we don't, like maybe agree with all the time. And also, all of our partners don't agree on all the issues. So sometimes we have to have like real conversations. I mean, I think public education comes to mind as something that we have really grappled with as a coalition. We have, a lot of the teachers association or teachers unions rather, in our fold, and we're working with them. And we have this this vision for public education, public school strong, that kind of thing. But also, some of the community organizations are like, well, what about?
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.